It's not the most accurate weapon, nor the most elegant. But it simply doesn't have to be.
Alright y'all, welcome back to Comet Arms channel. Okay, so today we are checking out another awesome video from the Ahoy YouTube channel. Now, we've checked out a few videos from this channel already. You guys already know I love the content. We've checked out the Beretta, the M16, a bunch of other stuff. Today we're checking out the AK-47. Now, the AK-47 is arguably one of the most iconic firearms in existence. I've used a few different variants. I'll try and post up pictures of me using various AKs whenever I can in the video. But this should be a good one. It's nice learning about guns. It's nice to learn about the history. And it's even cooler when you're learning about all that while they're sort of portraying the gun in a bunch of different video games and movies and whatnot. And this channel does a really good job of also adding some really solid graphics and narrations. So I'm excited to check it out. So let's do it.
What could be more iconic than the Kalashnikov? Rough-hewn from wood and iron, its simple construction belies an enduring example of industrial design.
The intros, man, never get old.
It's the weapon of choice for a revolution and the backbone of any insurgency.
True.
So, what makes the AK so special?
Counter-Strike.
Why is a near 70-year-old rifle still so popular? And is there really no substitute?
Years. Yeah, I don't say there's not many things that could substitute the AK, to be honest.
The legendary rifle's story starts in Soviet Russia, in the embers of World War II. This was an era of rapid technological progress amidst valiant acts, and the Soviet Union loved a hero. Mikhail Kalashnikov was a tanker in the Red Army, wounded in action in 1941. During his recuperation, he learned of his comrades' woes with their issued rifles, and resolved to tackle them with a soldier-focused approach to small arms design. With innate usability born from simplicity and reliable function.
Nice. It's kind of cool just to like, okay, my fellow countrymen have been complaining about these firearms, so let me invent one that's even better. Now, again, there's very few firearms that are as iconic as the AK, and it's for these things. It's a simplicity, it's a reliability, especially. They're tough as nails, and again, for tech that's like almost 70 years old, or maybe even more, actually more than 70 years now. I don't know, quick math. Yeah, over 70 years old now. It's pretty crazy how much it actually holds up. I mean, you'll see AKs from decades ago that are still going pretty strong. And again, that's because of their reliability. You can change out the parts super easily if something does get damaged, but the things will pretty much run through anything.
His early designs caught the eye of officials, and Kalashnikov found himself part of a small arms development group for the Red Army.
Huh.
The Soviets were not shy to take influence from what other forces were fielding, and between captured Nazi weapons, Allied supplies, and a long line of Russian prototypes, the AK-47 began to take shape.
That's cool. These graphics
the German
are so good.
Sturmgewehr 44 was a major influence. With similar form factor, it proved the viability of a mid-power cartridge, and provided the gas system for Kalashnikov's design.
Okay, there you go.
The earlier RPD would also lend its intermediate cartridge to the AK-47. The 7.62 by 39.
Wait, the RPD came out before the AK-47? That's kind of weird to think about.
Mm round, also known as the M43. Its slightly tapered casing is responsible for giving the AK-47 its distinctive curved magazine.
Yep, it's a banana magazine.
In demonstrations, the 1947 prototype outperformed any rival and was readily adopted by the Russians, although initial manufacturing issues did slow down deployment.
Huh.
These issues were remedied by 1959, when a modernized version was introduced, known as the AKM.
Yep, there it is.
It replaced the milled receiver with a stamped metal one, both lighter and easier to produce, and was also equipped with a muzzle brake to improve the accuracy of automatic fire. There were a large number of variants of this basic design, from the AKS with a folding stock to a large...
Yeah, honestly, the backbone of my knowledge of AKs comes from video games specifically and using different AK models in video games. So, I mean, even now I couldn't tell you the big difference between the AK-47 and the AKM. It gets a little more obvious when you start talking about like the AK-74 and whatnot. But yeah, the AKM is not nearly what people think. People probably think of AKM, they think of like this, you know, black, fully decked out polymer AK variant, but that's not really the case when you're talking about the original AKM.
Number of foreign-produced AK pattern rifles, such as the Chinese Type 56, Hungarian AMD 65, or the Finnish RK-62.
Hell yeah. Heh, that's stock.
The smaller caliber AK-74 emerged in 1974,
Makes
firing
sense.
the lighter but higher velocity 5.45 by 39mm round. With greater wounding potential versus the older round, the AK-74 would supplement and eventually replace the AKM in service. Pair these variants with such a broad service history, and you have a recipe for
Holy
a very
cow.
popular weapon indeed.
75 million?
There have been more Kalashnikov pattern rifles made than all other assault rifles combined. In fact,
Whoa,
of all the small
combined?
arms that exist, 1 in 5 is an AK.
That's insane to think
It's
about.
utterly ubiquitous.
That's pretty crazy to think about when you think about video games and all the different assault rifles that you've used in these video games, like the M4, M16, you got all the G36 variants. I mean, all the AR style variants, and 1 in 5 currently are AK variants, which again makes sense because they produce a crap ton of these things and they last for a very long time. So it does make sense, but holy cow, especially when you think about certain parts of the world where there's just AKs all over the place. It does make sense, but it's still pretty hard to believe.
Found in every corner of the globe. And such is its influence, it even adorns the flag of Mozambique.
Yeah, I remember learning about that.
No surprise then that the AK-47 is as popular in video games as it is in real life, with
Yes,
perhaps
it
as
is.
many digital renditions as those stamped from steel. It's so well known that most instances, regardless of variant, are labelled as the AK-47
Yes.
without fear
Oh,
of license
dude,
rights.
I remember using the AK in GoldenEye, and it wasn't that good looking. I don't even remember it looking this good. It kind of just looked like a black colored pencil when you were shooting it. But I was like, what is this thing? But then when you actually see it on the ground, it looks like really fierce and mean. And then you start seeing it in later games, and it's just cool because you can sort of build off of that. And as the graphics were getting better, you can sort of get more and more hyped up about certain guns.
Only the most cautious opt to use SADS appellations, such as GoldenEye's KF-7 Soviet, or the CV-47 in earlier Counter-Strike games.
It's a mean gun for sure.
These virtual depictions reflect the rifle's design in a variety of ways, but there's no mistaking the familiar characteristics of the AK.
Okay.
Often, a weapon's identity is forged by the powers that wield it, and with its prominent use
Good
by the
point.
Second World during the Cold War, the AK has come to symbolize the defiance and might of those who would oppose the West.
Yep, that's a good way of
It's
putting
the
it.
foil to the American M16, and the weapon of choice for any opposing force. And for that reason, it's often the default option for the bad guys in games that mirror any recent conflict.
Yep, that's a very
In some
good point.
cases, like in Counter-Strike, the AK is only available to the terrorist forces. And here it has prime placement, being the top-tier automatic weapon on offer, alongside the counter-terrorists M4.
And that's kind of funny, like, even with, like, in the Marine Corps and in the Army, we have targets where it's like a 3D molded target, and you have, like, an AK molded into it. We call it the Ivan target, but you have the AK molded into it. So it's sort of bred in our minds in that way. And at the same time, whenever you have, like, an opposing force, like, for me, I did an opposing force, like, exercise for the National Guard, and we got AKs. Because, again, it's just like that staple opposing force bad guy weapon. So it is kind of ingrained in my mind in that way, and you can sort of see it. I guess it makes it look a little bit more mean in Western eyes, if that makes any sense.
Perhaps it's by its association with untrained militia fighters, or just affinity by design. But long bursts of automatic fire, spray and pray, seems like a natural fit for the AK.
Okay, yeah, until you actually do it.
It has perfectly
Can't hit
good
anything.
accuracy, and is more than capable of hitting targets within its effective range. But somehow, the AK doesn't feel like a marksman's rifle.
Yeah,
Luckily, the weapon is quite suited to sustain fire, and this is normally reflected within its depiction. The AK's rate of fire is fairly moderate, and while recoil is present, it's still possible to rest the weapon onto a close-range target. It's not particularly elegant, nor great for ammo conservation, but you've got 30 chances to hit something, even if it's not what you were aiming at.
nice. Okay.
Of course, it's not just enough to be
Interesting.
capable of automatic fire. A weapon must also be able to dole out magazine after magazine without stoppage or fuss. Luckily, The AK's reliability is legendary.
Yes, they are
With
not
loose
fussy.
tolerances and as simple a mechanism as possible, there's not too much that can go wrong, and even less that can't be put right. This is
That's
one
true.
trait that doesn't transfer well to video games. Malfunctions are seldom shown, as firearm maintenance isn't a particularly exciting endeavour, and experiencing a feed failure mid-firefight would only prove frustrating.
Huh. Yeah,
Some games do reflect these factors, however.
yeah, that's kind of true. You can't. There's not many games that actually utilize like a malfunction mechanic, which again, it's not going to be exciting. It's going to be kind of annoying if you get a malfunction out of nowhere. I think like Escape from Tarkov is a pretty good example of implementing that. So it can get annoying, but you can't really get a good appreciation for the AK if you're not doing stuff like that. Because for me, using the AK in real life, I know that these things are literally built like tanks, so you can just mess them up and they'll just eat anything that you give them. So you can't get a good appreciation if you're just doing like video games, especially if they don't have that sort of mechanic.
Perhaps most notably Far Cry 2, with scavenged weapons proving much less reliable than those bought brand new.
That's weird. That's kind of cool
Weapon
though.
condition is also a factor in some RPGs, such as in Fallout 3, but a poorly kept weapon suffers only in the damage stakes rather than with any interruption.
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's
still
its
shooting
reliability
bullets.
and simplicity that gives the weapon much of its charm. Other weapons might be more high-tech, but that does you no good if it chokes in dusty environments.
True.
It seems almost sacrilegious to tamper with the purity of the AK. Strapping anything superfluous to the weapon is an insult to the design principles of Kalashnikov.
What a great word.
Some games do let you customize your AK-47 with a variety of attachments. Optics, suppressors, and garish paint jobs.
Yes.
Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare had the right idea, as equipping a red dot sight would harm the AK-47's long-range damage, meaning the most sensible choice was just a plain rifle with iron sights.
That's kind of weird.
Remember, just because you can, doesn't mean you should.
So I've shot a few different AKs, and I'll say shooting an AK with a red dot sight in it is much more satisfying. Again, red dot sights are just easier, and I feel like you can predict the recoil a little bit better when it's just a dot. So you kind of get like a better feel for the weapon when you just have the dot to deal with. So I don't know. I think it looks pretty cool, but maybe that is like, blasphemy or something.
Of course, if you're some tin pot dictator of some
the
far-flung land, you can generally do whatever you like. And this extends to having your favourite rifle gold-plated.
Yep.
Although such weapons are ornamental and clearly not designed for the rigours of battle, some games do feature golden guns.
Hey, they
Some
have them in real
represent
life.
the pinnacle of accomplishment with the weapon, a reward for the completion of challenges, while others just represent an absence of good taste.
Got him. That's funny.
So, the AK-47, the very best there is. From drug lords to peasant rebellions, the AK is everyone's favourite weapon. A great equaliser, irrespective of wealth or status. It's not the most accurate weapon, nor the most elegant, but it simply doesn't have to be. It's
Very
good
true.
enough. It excels where fighters need it most. It's reliable. Stoppages are rare, and any faults that do occur can probably be fixed with a hammer.
I've seen that
It's
too.
simple to use. There's no need to pore over a manual. The AK is point and shoot. It's so simple, a child could use it. And in some parts of the world, they often do.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
It's cheap, easy to manufacture, and even easier to acquire. If you're looking to arm an insurrection on a budget, no other rifle will come close. It is an old weapon, but it's not yet outdated. At the end of World War II, it was cutting edge, and led the way for the rise of the assault rifle during the 20th century. Today, although not quite as high-tech as some infantry weapons, the AK-47 still performs its duty.
That's
And
very
with
true.
100 million rifles in existence, its popularity is unlikely to evaporate anytime soon. With its widespread use and low cost, the weapon can be counted alongside the most basic of tools. The hammer,
Oh my gosh.
the sickle, the AK-47.
Nice. I like how he sort of circled that back. You guys already know I love these videos so much. That was really, really cool. Okay, now I will say, there are plenty of modern firearms that you can get nowadays that are extremely reliable. I have a few guns that have never malfunctioned, and that's kind of because I take care of them. I'm pretty confident that if I don't clean them and whatnot, they'll still perform, flawlessly for a very long time. But I don't think it'll be as long as the AK, because again, the AK is just, it's so simple. Again, I've literally seen people, or this one dude, he wedged the barrel of the AK into like this part of a truck, and he put all of his weight onto it to try and fix the barrel and the side alignments, and it actually worked. So after seeing something like that, it's sort of hard to compare modern firearms with that. So as far as that, it's going to be kind of hard to replace the AK, and I'm not sure if you ever will. With things like the AK, with the MP5, even with the M16, they were absolutely ahead of their time. And even with like the modern versions of them, they've only really changed things to sort of increase the modularity a little bit, or the comforts of using it. The MP5 has barely changed. The M16 sort of changed just to add like certain attachments to it, make it a little bit more comfortable to shoot and whatnot. And same goes for the AK. So at its root, at like the base of the firearm, it's still pretty much the same. So I don't know if you're necessarily going to replace the AK. I think you can build off of it to a point where it's, not necessarily the AK anymore. But as far as replacing it, I don't think that's going to be possible. Because again, the simplicity is there, and I think with modern firearms, you're not going to see that as much. People aren't going to be trying to tailor their firearm for the simplicity so much, especially when you have crazy technology that will allow you to do, a little bit more and, make it to fit our tolerances. But yeah, this was an awesome video. Again, it gives us a good background for the history of the AK, gives us a good appreciation for the AK. And then, of course, we can see it in all these different video games. And I don't know about you guys, but it sort of rekindled some memories of me actually using the AK in a bunch of different games. Now, it does, again, it seems like the bad guy weapon, and that's sort of just part of its legacy. And I think that's, you can accept that based off of what the AK is and what it was, built off of, it was sort of based off of, who actually created it. You can sort of appreciate that and just sort of respect it. But yeah, I don't have any AKs right now. I do plan on getting an AK because, again, I've used them a bunch. It's nice to have an AK around because it's just a nice, like, okay, hey, I need to go do some stuff. Let me bring an AK, and I'm sure that sucker is going to work fine. At the same time, the ammo is pretty cheap too. So yeah, you might see me doing some shooting with the AK on my shorts channel here in a little bit. So if you guys haven't subscribed to the shorts channel, I'll put that link in the video description so you guys can check that out. That's where I go and do all my shooting and whatnot. So if you guys are interested in that, you can do that. But let me know what you guys think about this video. Let me know what you guys think about the AK or any sort of AK variants that you've used. Again, I know the Finnish Defense Forces, you guys have your RK-62 or whatever. So yeah, let me know how you guys think about all that. But yeah, again, the AK is pretty iconic. It's kind of hard to sort of hate something that has a legacy like the AK. But thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, you can hit the thumbs up, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. But that is it for this video. I'll see you all in the next one.